Hello chess friends and welcome to your of Chess channel and welcome to a spectacular strategic gameplay by the latest version of Stockfish, the powerful Stockfish 16. Today we see the fish battling it out against another top engine Qe2 in the beautiful Zukertort opening in the so-called Nimzo-Larsen Variation. So we see now again the beautiful Nimzo-Larsen attack, and if you maybe are searching for an opening with the white pieces, maybe you don't want to play all the time d4, e4, c4 something, I think the Nimzo-Larsen attack is perfectly fine. I think you can surprise your opponent. If you watch now this game, I think you'll love this Nimzo-Larsen attack for sure, and you'll try it out maybe in your own game. So let's see now what happened with the white pieces. The fish opened with the move knight to f3. The response was Qe2 was knight to f6, and now comes the move b3, which is sort of a reversed Queen's Indian, reversed accelerated Queen's Indian move order that here Stockfish 16 played, which becomes now the so-called Nimzo-Larsen variation of the Zukertort opening. The main concept about this whole opening is to play bishop to b2. Then we're trying to play the move e6, maybe pin the knight on c6 with bishop to b5, and then coordinate the attack, of course, with something like, I don't know, knight to e5, f4, and similar stuff. So we're trying to have a great grip around the square e5. If you're familiar maybe with the concepts of the Queen's Indian defense, but now it's only in the reversed way. The Queen's Indian defense is, and I think, a perfectly fine opening. So now we play sort of a Queen's Indian defense, but +1 tempo. So here in the game, we have c5 by Qe2, we have bishop to b2, knight to c6, and now comes this idea, e3. We're trying to attack the knight. The knight is of course controlling the e5 square, and then cement our position around the square e5, play f4, maybe even Rg4, trying of course to launch a kingside attack. One of the options to prevent this is now to go with the move a6, but now I think we can play normal with d4, c4, and going into structures, maybe with the move d5, if necessary, also knight to d2, knight to c3, e4. So I think we could have here a great central control. Black has lost now maybe tiny little tempo in the opening with the move a6, but this is also, I think, playable for black. In the game, after move e3, Qe2 played now the move d5, allowed here Stockfish to play the move bishop to b5. As I said, we're attacking the knight is controlling the e5 square. Look at this, we have now a nice control of this very important square on our opponent's side of the board. In the game, you can play, of course, e6, you can, of course, play bishop to d7, Qe2 played d6. Even if you play bishop to d7, to maybe somehow keep your structure healthy, here, then we simply castle. You can maybe challenge again the bishop, but we always pick up here the knight on c6. We want to get our plan. Knight to e5, f4, of course not necessary immediately, but in the later stage, look at this, f4, we have now great grip. Queen to f3, queen to h3 in some lines is an attacking method, even g4, g5. So I think you could have here really a beautiful attacking flow. So here, that's why from bishop to b5, Qe2 developed with e6, and Stockfish grabs simply the pawn. Has now messed up the pawn structure here on the queen side. We have d3, bishop to e7, and now with queen to e2, again the same method. e5, also now a beautiful option is knight to d2, and then to hit the center with the move e4. Perfect strategy, I think, so far. Nothing wrong also in black's position. We should not say that black may have made a mistake or something here, but it's very hard, I think, for black now to include the bishop pair into the game. You can of course include it in this way, but too many pawns have to be moved in order to somehow liberate the long diagonal for the light bishop. You could try, of course, bishop to a6, but then with knight to d2, I think we can protect some ideas of c4. If you play bishop to a6, then knight to d2 controls, of course, further the c4 square, so we would have, I think, a great protection. Also, the dark square bishop of blacks is not playing in perfect shape, so as I said, the main issue here for black is how to activate now the bishop pair in the game. Kingside casting, we have knight from b to d2 by Stockfish, knight from f to d7 here by the Qe2 engine. Stockfish continues with the move e4. This is the way they go. We want to break the pawn chain, and of course, black doesn't want to take. If black takes, then you're really left with the weakened pawn structure, c5 weak, c6 weak. So that's why black is trying to hold the position in the center of the board. Wants basically you to take out now the pawn on d5. If that happens, then of course c takes d5 would simply improve the pawn structure of blacks. So here the game f6 was played by Qe2, and Stockfish immediately breaks in the center with the move e5, and this is the way to go. Beautiful strategic move, although this is now blocking out your dark square bishop, but it's also creating a static position, because we have knights on the board, and the knights will have more static positions. So with the move e5, I think we can cement the position. The position is not so dynamic anymore. The bishop pair of blacks, as I mentioned before, is not so dangerous. It's not so important. So the knights could be very, very useful in the continuation of the game. So that's why Caissa played f5, the only move. If you take, then after knight to e5, look at this. E6 weak, C6 weak, you have long-term problems, I think, to defend this position. You can never advance the pawn. First of all, this one has to be protected. Still, kingside attacks are working. Now the bishop is liberated on this diagonal. Not a good continuation here for black. So that's why from e5, f5, but the game becomes more and more static. So here in the game, we have now h4 by Stockfish. Stockfish simply continues the pressure. And maybe Caissa makes now a tiny little inaccurate move. Maybe Caissa should have contemplate this idea with the move a5, maybe with the threat to play the move a4, because here I think it would be very risky for white to stay with the king in the center, because this position, although we cannot include the bishops immediately into the game, but we can, I think, if the king stays too long in the center of the board, we can even sacrifice some material just in order to open the position in front of white's king. So that's why with the move a5, I think black could prevent maybe here white from castling queenside. And in the beginning it seemed to me that it would be very, very risky for white to castle queenside, but that's exactly Stockfish's mean plan. Really, really wild stuff. For instance, here h4 was played by Stockfish. Caissa responded here with the defensive move h6. Stockfish castled now queenside, and now a5 comes a little bit slow. We can always stop it with a4. c4 is still taken. Here after queenside castling, queen to a5 was played by Caissa, but Stockfish simply improves the position of the king first, plays now king to b1, and still it seemed to me that black has good chances here because the b file is open, the bishop pair will eventually come into the game, but Stockfish had calculated this position in a beautiful way. After queen to b4, Stockfish first of all played a beautiful defensive move c4. It's not allowing this c4 by black. If that happens, maybe black will lose the pawn, but will simply let the position explode here on the queen side. Rook to f7 was played by Caissa. Stockfish continues now with the king side attack with g4, opening up the g file and maybe somehow putting more pressure against black's king. We have a5 finally, but it's a little bit too slow. Stockfish plays now beautiful a3, kicks away the queen, and now a4. Again, a strange move maybe, leaving such a weak hole in the position, this weak square b4, but now this solid structure is not allowing you to break and enter with the pawns. I hope you realize that no pawn mobility, no good really pawn mobility for black is possible. The only weakness is, as I said, somehow to get the knight on b4, but still we can control this this knight maybe with bishop to c3 or necessary with bishop to a3, so when the knight comes we'll simply take it out. So maybe even you don't have to even take out the potential knight on b4, but I think here with the move a4, Stockfish secured really the position on the queen side, and now Stockfish is saying, now we're playing on my side. Now the only possibilities are on the king side, and that's what I liked. First of all, defensive good structures, and then attacking opportunities here on the king side. Queen to d8, knight to e1. We have now knight to b8. Here Caissa, as I said, is trying this plan, knight to a6, knight to b4, but Stockfish continues with g4, and of course white's attack is, I think, much faster, much more dynamic, especially because of the beautiful rooks here on the g and h file. What should you do? You cannot pass through, you cannot play f4 because we'll simply break and enter with the move g5. You cannot play h5, the pawn is lost, the queen is controlling the square. If you takes, you get this one. We attack now the bishop. You cannot play even bishop to h6 because of queen to h6. So the attacking harmony here on the king side is simply too much to handle here for black. So that's why after move g4, Caissa was forced basically to play the move f takes g4. Rook comes beautifully into the game. We have knight to a6, we have rook to g1, rook to a7, controlling of course the g7 square, and now Stockfish continues with f4. The problem is now, even if you pick up now the piece here on f4, again diagonals will be open. Bishop to c1, maybe then somehow move the knight. Again the h6 is weak, so you're getting destroyed again, I think, here on the g file. Bishop to f8, Caissa brings a new defender into the game. We have rook to g6. Stockfish plays a beautiful space advantage now with the rook here. We have queen to h4. Stockfish doesn't care. Stockfish wanted to open files anyway against black's king, so now Caissa took the pawn, but now this position is very far from being good here for black. I think the position is now exploding here on this side of the board. Knight to f3 hitting the queen. We have queen to h3 by the Kai'Sa engine. The problem is now if you play something like queen to f4 here, then after bishop to c1, again this dirty tactics with bishop to h6 and similar stuff. So that's why after here queen to rook to g3 that Stockfish played, sorry, here we was, sorry about that. So this was the position. You cannot, of course, as I said, pick up the pawn on f4. That's why here queen to h3 was played by Kai'Sa. Stockfish puts more pressure against the queen. The queen drops back on h5, and now queen to g2, simply continuing the pressure against this weak square g7. Again, if you try something like rook to f4, again the same tactic will happen. You have to step back with the rook, and now a rook to h6 is obviously winning the game. So here after move queen to g2, Kai'Sa tried king to h7, getting out of the g file mess, but this is again far away from defending here the whole position. Stockfish played now a beautiful move. Maybe you can pause the video and try to see now good tactic here for white. I'm not saying it's completely winning, but in top engine level, I think this is devastating for black. So try to see now the best continuation. Okay, here Stockfish played a beautiful rook to g5. Basically, this move is trapping the queen. The queen doesn't have good squares. We have h takes g5, rook to h3. Okay, black can of course take out now also another rook. It seems so that this should be enough material as a compensation, but the follow-up is a problem after king to g8. Now comes knight to g5. The rook is hanging. If you play here something like rook to f4, you get checkmated immediately on h7. So that's why for knight to g5, g6 had to be played. And now Stockfish grabbed the rook and has now basically a queen for the rook and a minor piece, which is in some lines maybe not enough, but we have to also really talk about the king security of blacks. It's not so good to have the king like this. The king is exposed. Many weaknesses here in the position, especially if the queen somehow gets behind his pawns. Devastating position again for black. So we have queen to g3 hitting this pawn. We have rook to g7 protecting, bishop to c3, knight to b4, knight to f3. You could maybe try knight to d3, but then bishop to a5, very dangerous. We create a pass pawn, which could be supported by the bishop. Again, a not good continuation here for black. So after knight to f3, we have g5, f takes g5. We have bishop to d7, and now finally bishop takes b4, c takes b4. You don't want again to take out with the a pawn because it creates a pass pawn on the edge of the board. We have queen to g4. Stockfish is sneaking in, rook to h7, and now g6, rook to h1. Nothing spectacular. You have a couple of checks, but now after knight to g5, this pawn is also weak. So Stockfish is of course trying also to include the queen into the game. So this game is very bad here for black. King to g7, now comes this idea, queen to f4, king to g6, queen to f6 check, king to h5, queen to f3, and now Stockfish grabs the rook. Beautiful tactics. Continues now with the queen against the bishop pair, but in some lines, maybe this could be a drawish position if you somehow manage to fix everything, to keep everything glued together. If you try to maybe build some kind of a fortress, but this is far away from being a fortress. Still, Stockfish has great attacking chances, including the queen somehow. As I said, the main goal is here to pick up the pawn on a5. King to g6, Stockfish delivers a check, and now comes this idea. Both pieces are hanging. Stockfish grabs now the pawn, takes out now also this other pawn. Here, Kai'Sa went to h5, king to c4, improving a little bit the position of the king, and now simply pushing this pawn further. Here, after queen to e4, king to h5 was played, Stockfish pushes the pawn further. We have bishop to g6. Here, I think you can even sacrifice immediately the queen for the bishop. This would be also a cool ending of this spectacular game, but after move bishop to g6, Stockfish continues with queen to f3 and now pushes the pawn further. I think a human would sacrifice the queen for a bishop, just a little bit to humiliate your opponent, I think, for sure, forcing your opponent basically to resign. But now, of course, another queen is coming into the game here. After a couple more moves here, the game was over. Stockfish grabbed also this other piece, and after queen to f4, it was a beautiful checkmate delivered by two queens. Great game, great strategic game, I think, by Stockfish. This wasn't really this most brutal Stockfish that we have used to see now in the past, but in my opinion, really instructive game. Very interesting choice to castle queenside here. Many of us, I think, would hesitate with this move because seems so, as I said, that this position could be broken. A5 was maybe the defensive plan for black in some lines, but still I kind of think that white's attack here with rook to G1 G4 was much more faster. The king was already exposed, so in my opinion, really beautiful, spectacular game here by Stockfish 16. So okay, I hope that you enjoyed this game. I really enjoyed it a lot. Interesting ideas of the Zukertort opening, of the Nimzo-Larsen variation. If you want to see more epic strategic and more epic tactical games played by Stockfish 16 and also by some other top engines, check out our commented chess games played by computer series. Here's the link of our playlist, and if you like this content, don't forget to subscribe to my channel. See you soon with some more videos, and what do we say in the end? Chess is the best, of course.